In the remote heart of Central Africa, deep beyond the reach of roads, maps, and modern law, something was about to unfold, something the world was never supposed to see. 100 men, one silverback gorilla, no guns, no safety nets, only raw strength, instinct, and the will to survive. They called it the most dangerous experiment ever attempted in the natural world. Some called it barbaric, others called it courageous. But no one walked away unchanged. This is the story of Oromu, the beast the jungle feared, and the 100 men who tried to conquer him. Oromu was not a creature of myth. He was real, towering, terrifying. Locals called him the thunder that walks, a silverback gorilla unlike any other, weighing in at over 440 pounds, with arms like pistons and eyes that gleamed with uncanny intelligence. He was no ordinary animal. He didn't avoid human. She confronted them. He had flipped jeeps, torn through traps, left behind nothing but mangled gear and silence. Entire sections of jungle went quiet when he passed through. Farmers abandoned fields. Even the lions knew to steer clear. What made him different wasn't just size, it was behavior. Oromu didn't run from threats, he erased them. So a question arose that scientists, soldiers, and madmen alike whispered in private. Could man defeat him without machines? Could numbers, coordination, and courage beat nature's apex brute force? That question birthed the experiment. 100 men were chosen, recruited quietly from across Africa. Some were ex-military veterans of special operations. Others were Maasai lion hunters, used to facing death with nothing but a spear. A few were athletes, boxers, wrestlers, even parkour experts. They came from Egypt, Kenya, Rwanda, Ghana, Cameroon, and beyond. Each had a reason. Some sought money, some glory. One man came to honor his brother killed by Oromu 2 years earlier during a patrol gone wrong. They trained in secret, learned to move silently through dense brush, studied gorilla body language, practiced flanking maneuvers and non-verbal signals. There were no simulations, no safety drills, only the promise of confrontation. The site was chosen carefully, a fenced-off area in the Congo Basin, about 2 square kilometers, bounded by high steel mesh and natural cliffs. Drone cameras were hidden in trees. Medical tents were placed on the perimeter. The men were given only primitive weapons, handmade spears, nets, ropes, and shields. No guns, no tranquilizers, no escape. This wasn't just a battle. It was a test, a statement. And for some it was a kind of justice. At dawn, the jungle was still. A thick fog hung low over the underbrush. Bait had been placed in the clearing, bananas soaked in synthetic pheromones, carefully prepared by primate specialists. Then, a low grunt. Branches cracked, birds scattered, and there he was, Oromu. He emerged from the mist like a nightmare made of muscle and rage. He sniffed the air, took a step, then another, and froze. He knew. The first squad moved in 10 men, creeping forward in a crescent formation. The plan was simple: provoke, distract, and drive him toward the southern snare pit. But plans crumble in the face of fury. Oromu didn't run, he roared. A sound like thunder wrapped in agony shook the trees. Then he charged. What happened next lasted just 14 seconds. But to the men caught in it, it felt like eternity. One man was lifted off the ground and slammed headfirst into a tree. Another was swatted aside, his ribcage caving in like paper. A third screamed as Oromu dragged him by the leg into the bushes. The squad fell apart. Chaos, screams, blood. 3 were down. 2 wouldn't rise again. The remaining men regrouped. They were shaken but not broken. They shifted tactics, dug trenches, created barriers using vines and sharpened stakes. They split into fire teams north, west, and east, each team tasked with baiting, chasing, and exhausting the beast. But Oromu adapted. He used the trees to hide, circled behind squads, vanished, then struck from above. At one point, he dropped from a canopy onto a group of 4, flattening one instantly. Another man lost an eye. 2 more suffered fractures. The drones captured only blur, motion, a blur of brown and black and screaming men. By the 45-minute mark, over 20 men had sustained injuries, cuts, concussions, torn ligaments. But still, they pressed on. Eventually, he began to slow. Blood oozed from his side. A spear had caught him just beneath the shoulder blade. Another lodged in his thigh. His chest rose and fell with labored breath. He snarled, but his movements grew erratic. Desperate, that's when the final wave was unleashed. 50 men. A storm of limbs, roars, and raw willpower. They came in layers first with nets and ropes, then spears, then fists. He fought back with everything he had. One man was bitten. Another flung 30 feet across the battlefield. But for every one man he felled, 5 more closed in. And at last, he dropped to one knee. Still growling, still alive, but broken. He looked up, eyes glazed with rage and sorrow. And then, silence. The final blow came from a quiet man, a Maasai warrior. He stepped forward, alone, and drove his spear into Oromu's chest. Deep, slow, respectful, the beast fell forward, and the jungle wept with him. In the aftermath, the numbers were sobering. 3 men dead, 14 critically injured, countless bones fractured, dozens psychologically shaken. Oromu's body was examined, scanned, and transported. Some say he was cremated. Others believe his bones were sold to a biomedical company in Europe. A few whisper that his skeleton lies in a private vault in Geneva classified as Specimen Zero. The experiment was never repeated. Condemned by conservationists. Buried by governments. Erased from public record. But the footage survived. So what was learned? That humans can overcome almost anything together. That nature, no matter how mighty, can be brought low but at great cost. And that sometimes, in our thirst for dominance, we forget to ask the most important question. Should we? This was not a victory. It was a mirror held up to man's pride, cruelty, and relentless ambition. Because, in the end, we didn't prove that humans are stronger. We proved we were willing to become monsters to defeat one. This wasn't just a battle. It was a warning.